time a meme wave goes viral, there's always a reason. The Harlem Shake, flossing, Fortnite, 6-7, you get the idea. But Jujutsu Kaisen has done it twice, at least in the anime sphere. And it got me thinking, why? Why does JJK consistently get this kind of treatment online that a single character's moment can resurface memes everywhere? Join me as we peer into the abyss and take a look at anime's most unhinged and chaotic fandom. My name is Josh, and are you the journalist for Beyond Media because you're Josh? Or are you Josh because you're the journalist for Beyond Media? Before we can get a handle on why the internet creates memes like this, we need to take a step back and identify the catalyst for how something like this can even happen. And in JJK's case, there are actually 5. The first is that JJK is a member of what some call the Dark Trio alongside Chainsaw Man and Hell's Paradise, one of which I can confirm has a very unstable fan base for certain. Regardless, the contents of a series to be placed in this group is one that lends itself to the engagement of some darker ideas. Kenjaku's whole plotline, the hidden inventory arc, heck, the premise of Yuji being a vessel for an immense evil only living so that he can eventually be executed. It's a series that asks its characters to grapple and redefine things like wanting to live, what it means to take a life, or whether or not it's right for them to stay alive. The second is that during the birth of the original 2023 Lobotomy Kaisen era, the anime was airing both the Shibuya arc incident where the manga was being updated with another section of the story that was just as anticipated and stress-inducing. The more you were invested in both the anime and the manga directly impacted how seriously you took the series and the discussion around it, with instances in the manga producing PhDs in anatomy and medicine to determine the fate of fictional characters. All in all, the nature of JJK as a series and the fertile ground of both the manga and anime simultaneous run set the stage for the third catalyst: nothing. JJK's author, Gege Agatami, took several breaks during the tail end of the manga due to his severely declining health, likely as a result of the intense schedule weekly release even takes. One of these breaks even spanned 3 straight weeks, and because of that, overly energetic fans had nowhere to pour all their anxiety and excitement into, which left room for the fourth catalyst. No matter how fast leakers or translators get to a manga to make it accessible to a Western audience, the source text is always in Japanese, leading to a common handful of translation complications in every manga across all of history. And due to multiple translators working on any given manga for different distributors, JJK Chapter 221 had a few different options presented to the public for one panel, in particular of Gojo answering a single question: would you lose? One option was, quote, I will win, keeping the spirit of the original Japanese. Viz, Ever Reliable to Fumble translated it simply as no. But by far the most popular was one referencing a scene all the way back in Chapter 3, with Gojo saying, nah, I'd win. Now, at the time, there was the nah meme, and the similarity of nah, I'd win and the phrase nah melded together by a Reddit user A-Clean the Casual to create this. And this image became the seed by which everything would grow from. And that was all thanks to the 5th catalyst. Something that, if you can believe it, had been stirring for literal decades. Wait, what? What happened? What's wrong? Well, JJK was released in 2018, and the memes only started in 2023. What do you mean by decades? Oh, well, I mean, cultural phenomenon usually requires levels of infrastructure to make work, you know? Like progress? Yeah, like to have a moon landing, you need the threat of war, social pressure, tech development, and certain other catalysts all already in place. So you're saying Lobotomy Kaisen was the internet's moon landing? That's not what I'm saying, but that is a funny thought. Basically, a perfect storm doesn't matter if there isn't a pre-existing environment to draw from and affect again. Oh, I see. And that's the 5th catalyst? I mean, that's what my research says, at least. Apologies, please carry on. No worries. There's a fandom concept called the inverse law of fandom levity, which is just a fancy way to describe what you're looking at when people put K-On! Theme music over a super jacked guy playing the guitar. The idea is that whatever the tone, atmosphere, or stakes of any piece of fiction is, its fandom will inevitably engage in whatever its direct opposite of the source material suggests. This is why one of the darkest video games ever created, Fear and Hunger, has a large majority of fan work that depicts characters that, in canon, endure some of the most horrific things imaginable imaginable, just having fun, or being a silly dysfunctional family. Or why the mouthwashing fandom tends to create those funny skits, art behind the scenes, or cast roleplays, reimagining the events of the horror game as just a story and the characters as just actors. And this is a consistent trend across a lot of darker stories, and even wholesome ones like children's shows. My Little Pony source material is aimed at children to teach them lessons about friendship, but the fandom instead uses these characters as a proxy for much darker creations, such as the infamous Cupcakes video that imagined Pinkie Pie as a cannibal serial killer, or the My Little Pony Outbreak AU, reimagining the ponies navigating an apocalyptic landscape where a deadly virus is infesting everything in the world. The reason that fandoms do this is multifaceted, but it's usually due to the lingering curiosity that follows a series where a substantial amount of people enjoy the characters. For the darker media, the source material answers what it would look like if these characters existed in a dark and cruel world, meaning that the overflowing passion from the fandom grows collectively curious as to see what these characters would look like if things were a little less dark. On the flip side, series with lots of color and innocent fun lack exploration within those dark landscapes, inverting the curiosity of the fandom. While it may seem less logical to make something fun dark when you could make something dark fun, what this does for a fandom is allow an audience a safe space to grow up with a piece of media. For many people, this type of fandom engagement provides a familiar landscape to test more mature ideas, whether for self-curiosity or for curiosity of the characters themselves. Jujutsu Kaisen simultaneously running both its darkest arc to date to the majority of its fanbase through the Shibuya incident and the most high stakes in the manga meant two things. The fandom was always primed to make happier fan content because of the anime, and more silly content because of the manga. But none of this was supposed to happen yet. See, the inverse law of fandom levity usually only begins to take shape after a particular piece of media is finished and the first wave of popularity is dwindling. The reason being because after anything is finished, there is still residual passion from the fandom itself, which outpours in fan creation. That period of a high community engagement but low new content is fertile ground for this law to take place. As both JJK's anime and manga was still ongoing, this should have delayed the spike in fandom activity, but that's where that third catalyst I talked about earlier comes into play. Gege Akutami's breaks. The frequent pauses in new content, especially the infamous 3-week break, triggered this fandom reaction early, resulting in a sea of silly fan content from the manga community, which the bustling anime community magnified with their fresh and passionate participation. That meme wave in and of itself birthing a caricature of the type of person waiting for the new JJK manga chapter. A person who had been driven so insane by the lack of new content, they were forced to remix and reiterate what already existed and project that into what could happen next. Some would become so insane by just a single break week, they needed to be lobotomized to remain normal. And thus, Lobotomy Kaisen was born. All of that last bit was a lie. It's not even that deep. It's from the me after lobotomy meme. However, I do think my answer is cooler. Anyway. After a long enough time rise, the inverse law of fandom levity becomes less and less mainstream due to the obvious dwindling nature of a fandom as new things are released. But because JJK was still airing and being serialized, each new week and new story element brought with it a revitalized passion for Lobotomy Kaisen, with each ongoing break week refueling the insanity for the caricature that spawned Lobotomy Kaisen in the first place. As series stakes got higher, memes became more and more unhinged, silly, or downright nonsensical. League culture added to this intense wave, memes of the fandom not being able to read their own manga further exacerbating both the scope and the breadth of what Lobotomy Kaisen could have been. But what really makes Jujutsu Kaisen stand out in my mind isn't just the perfect storm that allowed it to happen, but the sheer virality and influence that it had. Once again, the inverse law usually never hits public mainstream consciousness because it tends to happen after the initial wave of a series' popularity. But Lobotomy Kaisen was uniquely positioned even at this point to go viral in a way that usually never happens. Wait, well, that makes sense as a last catalyst, but I don't know, viral? How do you even measure that? That's a good question. Well, there are a lot of things, but assuming we detract variables like timing, I found more or less 3 main things that propel anything into the mainstream. Which are? Well, the first one is... Okay, here, let's take a look at the original Nah I'd Win panel, and let me ask you a question. What about this image can be changed? Oh, okay. Well, obviously the text can be changed. That's what started this whole kerfuffle in the first place. Right, that's one of the things. The second is whatever we can infer prompts the response in the first place. For example, if Gojo says, "Nah, I'd eat," you'd infer the question before it becomes not "would you win," but something related to hunger. Aren't you being pedantic? No. I guess so. Context. Effectively, the context of the meme is another thing that can be changed. Right. And, well, I suppose a third thing you could change would be Gojo himself. Exactly. Meaning that effectively we have an image that only relies on the most basic rudimentary knowledge and composition of what it originally was in order to be funny. Swapping out Gojo for Bocchi from Bocchi the Rock is funny because of the sheer personality difference between the two characters. Swapping out the text becomes funny due to Gojo engaging in a conversation that is either removed from the original circumstance or from a different piece of fiction. Both of those things resulting in the first trait that makes anything go super viral, and that is malleability. Whether it's Sonic, JJK, or Garfield, anything that goes meme viral in the mainstream possesses a level of malleability, and Lobotomy Kaisen was ultra malleable, whether it was within the scope of JJK characters or adapting when crossing over with other IP. While a lot of memes were spread by people who were of course actively participating in JJK, the fact that many of the meme formats could be applied to other series or shows meant that it wasn't mandatory that you participate in JJK to understand the effect of the meme. A phenomenal example of this is this meme format getting popular on Instagram and TikTok right now.
Jogo was a calm spirit who cared about his friends deeply.
He is an advocate for women's rights.
One day he was trying to pass the time by bug hunting, but the criminal Gojo, now grown up and deeply feared after his brutal murder of
I'm sure you've seen those AI recaps of whatever happens in a scene or an episode of some show that everyone knows but nobody has seen, such as Grey's Anatomy. The AI voice version of it got so popular that people can just read the captions instead of actually needing to invest themselves in the series or, God forbid, actually watch the clip. However, in this iteration of the meme format, Jujutsu Kaisen characters are completely reframed, positioning Sukuna as this righteous protector or good guy while Gojo, Yuji, and the other sorcerers are evil, which in and of itself is also melding with another genre of meme and popular in the anime community, which is of course agenda posting. That makes sense. I mean, anyone can be drawn doing the Noya hair flip, everyone is in Fortnite and can be randomly inserted into anything. Exactly. The second thing that a lot of these viral memes rely on are a sense of relatability, which accrues itself in two different ways. There is the relatability of the characters due to a pre-existing relationship with them, through something like having watched the actual anime or read the manga, where you have already projected your time and interest onto the characters themselves. And the second is relatability through what is being said or done. When you look at an RG33 video or any of the many skit character channels, the focus is on putting characters we know into a dramatized version of other situations that we also already know about, both of which at some level are achievable due to the already established malleability of the Lobotomy Kaisen itself. And the final thing that I think really helps things go viral is the ability for someone to actively or casually participate with them. Within the JJK community, this would be things like slander posting or remixing their own niche versions of the memes themselves, or by simply being able to know what a hollow purple is or using the phrase "nah, I'd win" in a casual way if you're a casual online enjoyer. The ability to not only see a massive trend online but be able to actively participate by commenting, quoting, or creating is one of those big things that brings people together to all focus on the same thing. And if you're thinking that JJK's brain rot was limited to a single demographic, you clearly forgot about the Gojo figure incident, but I can't forget. What if, just as a thought experiment, you allowed people to take that ability to participate and let them create their own stories? There's something I've neglected to shine a spotlight on. See, due to a mix of leak culture on the rise, Lobotomy Kaisen actually beginning to have an impact on how people perceive the series, Gege Agatami's declining health, really bad mistranslations, and various other factors due to in-story decisions, JJK began to get a lot of negative backlash on its story toward the tail end. See, at a certain point, there's an expectation of the consumer to justly engage with the actual contents of a series. A great example of this would be the free-run drama surrounding how demons are portrayed. There's an argument that a poor interpretation for a series source material is ultimately on the creator's shoulders, as it should have been clear what the series' stance on a particular matter is. But realistically, an author attempting to create at least a somewhat nuanced story must reasonably trust its audience to actually be able to interpret what they're saying, which means there's a level of dual responsibility, which spawned in a strange divide in the fandom. If you've ever seen the "don't mess with JJK fans, we don't read our own manga" memes, this is the sort of thing it's referring to. Experiencing the manga and forming an opinion on it while consuming it through leaks or posts on Twitter is ultimately unhealthy not just for the fandom, but for the creator and the actual series itself. With this much fan-driven content being created, it begins to infiltrate the opinion and views of the original content itself, which matters a lot more when the ground is still fresh, so to speak, with JJK not even having been finished. And it makes you wonder, at what point does JJK stop belonging to Gege Akutami and begin belonging to its fandom? Or heck, at what point does any piece of art cross over that threshold? The ability to critique something, even if you're totally off base, requires almost no skill at all. And even if you're right, identifying that there is a problem and having the actual chops to fix it are completely different things. The beauty of fan content, whether it be memes or fan fiction, is because it's meant to come from a place of love, or at least respect for the series and the original creator, of which Lobotomy Kaisen very much was. It was a bit nonsensical at times, but ultimately all done in good fun. But what happens when fan fiction or fan content loses that respect for the author and stops engaging in good faith? Jujutsu no Kaisen was presented as an alternate storyline from the original source material, a fan rendition of Gege Akutami's work, starting from a big event that happened in the manga. It reimagined and reapplied Akutami's world, characters, power system, and overall plotlines into something that, to be blunt, looked like the culmination of what someone who only engaged with the series via fan content or Twitter opinions would make. While the original author was battling and overcoming both incredible physical illness, the horrible jump schedule, and waves of online negativity, a group of people were so dissatisfied that they scrounged up some art and used AI to write over the original artist. And I think if you really sit with that, it's actually kind of sad. Whether or not you even liked Jujutsu Kaisen, I think that most people would agree that pouring your all into something and putting your literal health and safety on the line for it is an honorable thing to do. With the release of JJK Season 3, Lobotomy Kaisen is back in full force, but ultimately it's completely culturally different now. The manga is actually over this time, but once again, it's that new content, just the single hair flip that's reviving everything. Ultimately, it's my hope that this iteration of Lobotomy Kaisen and the fandom itself actually reflects more of what it did back when things were so fun in 2023, 2024, as an appreciation of just what JJK is giving to the anime community, how hard the animators are working, how much passion was obviously put into the work. It's lots of fun to engage with the community, and lots of people are having a great time with it. It's funny, it's accessible, and a way for people to get to engage with something that they like. Part of the beauty of stories and art is the fact that it really doesn't just belong to the creator or the consumer. It's something that requires both. And for fans, I think that's what Lobotomy Kaisen legitimately was. And I hope that this time around, even though it's more like a resurgence than a completely independent meme wave, we keep that in mind, and we don't let excess unnecessary negativity or unexpected novelty taint that beautiful relationship between artist and fan, or animator and viewer. Maybe this really was our Jujutsu Kaisen.
You're a bum.
Oh, come on.
You're
Oh,
a
come no,
Baymax.
come on. No. If you enjoyed this video, you might like the previous one that I made all about Fujimoto's works and what made him so popular in shonen. And until next time, stand proud, you're strong, and keep dreaming.